everybody. I'm Jason. This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead. Today we're back out in the shop on this beautiful sunny afternoon to talk about the updates on this 1983 John Deere 214 mud mower. A few weeks ago, I started the process of tuning this thing in finally because it always ran a little bit rich. And in that process, there came about several changes. So last week I was working on this thing and a crazy idea just kind of popped into my head.
What? What just popped in there?
And that idea is the giant yellow elephant in this room, which is this hood scoop. Now, it is fully functional and it does serve a purpose. And by fully functional, I mean I've got a 7-inch electric radiator fan mounted underneath it that blows air down on the motor. The main reason I did it is because sometimes idling around for long periods of time, it can get a little bit stuffy under the hood. So this thing can freshen the air up under there, and I have it on the switch so it doesn't always have to be on. And it does pull a good amount of air. And the other reason is, it's just plain cool. So I'm gonna put a link in the description down below as to where you can get one of these. So while we're on the topic of cooling fans, I've also added 2 more for my oil cooler. I've got the oil cooler mounted up in the grill, and these 2 small electric fans pull air through. They're also on a switch. So the main reason I put those fans in, because I moved the oil cooler to make room for the alternator a few months ago. And that oil cooler used to be mounted to the motor, and it had provisions through the engine shroud to blow air through that oil cooler. Well, ever since I moved it, that air doesn't get to it anymore. And so I figured that'd be nice. It hasn't overheated yet, but it's a nice touch. Anyway, I didn't film that, so I'm gonna put a few videos of how I built that fan holder right here. So while we're under the hood, another modification I've done since the last time you all have seen it is the addition of an oil catch can. Now, I didn't just do this because I wanted to, it's because this motor has a crankcase ventilation hose, which is right here. And when these motors get up in the higher RPMs, sustained, or if you get them on an angle, turn sharp or whatever, oil will and has come out of this hose. And it used to be plugged into my air cleaner for crankcase ventilation. Now, what that caused was intermittent oil getting into the carburetor, into the combustion chambers, and then blowing white smoke out of my exhaust system. So I added this, a lot of guys do it, and so far it's been working great. And actually, it doesn't even have any oil in it. It hasn't happened yet, or since I've added this thing. But it is another line of precaution against that happening. So the next thing I want to talk about is the addition of a tachometer. This was definitely necessary to tune this thing in and to know where I'm at in the RPM range. So I got this from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description along with everything else I've been talking about. I got the idea of this tachometer from Mighty Rays. And so far it's been working fantastic. It just takes a positive and a negative to run the tachometer itself, and then it's got a signal wire which just wraps around the spark plug cable. The way this tachometer is mounted to my steering column, it's inside of a piece of 2-inch EMT electrical conduit. It's got a 2-inch EMT conduit strap or conduit hanger. This here is an 1.25 inch EMT conduit hanger, and there's some double-sided Velcro in between this hanger and my steering column so it can't really slip around and move. I drilled a small hole in the dashboard and put a rubber grommet for the wires to go down through. All right, so we've covered all the modifications that have been added to this tractor. Now, I also want to close out the tuning video by talking about the carburetor next. So, one of the biggest things that I've stumbled across when I started tuning this thing in a few weeks ago is that the fuel pressure regulator is completely backwards from what I thought it was supposed to be. Now, this fuel pressure regulator has a Mr. Gasket logo on it, but it's a Chinese regulator off the shelf at Advanced Auto Parts. Now, it's got numbers built into it, 1 through 5. And as long as I've had this on here, I've had it set to number 1, believing that number 1 meant 1 PSI. Well, that's not the case. And I have the flow correct. It goes in this way and back to the tank that way, and there's an arrow on it indicating that. However, when I put it on 1, it completely cuts off all the flow of fuel back to the tank, and all the pressure from the pump goes into the carburetor. When I put it on 5, it has almost 0 resistance, and that's how it's set currently, and that's how it works best. So this entire time that regulator's been there, it's been causing a lot of excess fuel pressure to be pushed past the needle and seat in the carburetor. It's overflowing the bowl and pushing fuel through the carburetor and literally causing fires to come out of the exhaust pipe. So excess fuel all along was absolutely my issue, because as soon as I started turning that thing down or to level 5, all that stuff went away. It was still running rich, but not nearly as bad, and that problem, I think, is a distant memory. So now the carburetor. This thing came from Performance 670 with a 250 main jet and a 17.5 pilot. Now, it currently has a 17.5 pilot. I tried to go richer on the pilot jet in the past, didn't work out at all. So 17.5 seems to be the magic number for that. That's the idle circuit. Now, the 250 main has proved to be way too much. So I went down to a 245, a 230, a 220. All of them were too rich, even messing with the needle height in the slide. So currently it's sitting at a 210 on the main jet, and I have my slide needle on the 4th position, right below the richest setting. So the 5th position would be the richest setting, and the 4th is the next one. It's on the 4th because so far, all around, that is absolutely the best it's been. This thing runs smooth idle, crisp acceleration. It's just great. So I'm leaving it there. That's my tune currently. If anything changes, I'll let you all know. One more small modification I made to the carburetor was I added a second return spring to the slide. I did that for a couple reasons. One, it would hang open and cause it to high idle after I'd been pushing the throttle pedal. And 2, the throttle pedal used to be way too loose. Now it's twice as stiff as it used to be. It's a lot easier to hold it in one position, even over bumps. And now when I let off, it goes right back to idle. So that's it for the modifications I've done to this tractor in the recent past. Now, as I was saying in the beginning of this video, it's an absolute gorgeous day outside. It's about 60 degrees, the sun's shining. We're gonna take this thing out, rip it around some, plus we're taking out some other tractors, and I hope you guys will come along with us. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed the content. This thing runs 110% better. It's a pleasure to drive this thing now, where before, I couldn't stand it sometimes. Once again, my name's Jason. This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.